And so I understand trying to get, eradicate it, but then I'm like, well, now what are they going to do for industry? They don't have any industry. They don't have anything over there. After the Russians left, they destroyed all their buildings that they had built. They polluted a lot of the lakes and rivers because they were so angry after being over there for 10 years themselves. And then they also dropped, it's got so many mines everywhere that you don't really want to go anyplace unless you know somebody's actually been out there EOD checking. So most time you want to stay on the one blacktop road that they call Ring Road. It actually goes around the entire country to all the major cities, Kabul, Herat, I can't think of, Kandahar, Mazar Sharif, and that's about the only blacktop road in the entire country. Everything else is dirt. And
so that's high plains, what you'd call?
High plains, desert, I guess. It's Kabul is at 7,000 and some odd feet, pretty much the same as Denver. And
so there's no such thing as irrigation or anything that way, is there?
No, they can't
water.
find water. Like I said, there's some areas that it's hard for them to get water at all. And so that's why I don't know what they're going to do. I understand us trying to be over there to eradicate the poppy, but then I don't know what they're going to do to survive.
Right.
Well, they can't depend on us forever.
No. But they are happy to have us there. I mean, in all honesty.
Well, every little bit helps them, right?
Oh yes. We've been over there in for the 10 years that we've been there, 11 years. We've done more for them than anybody else in the last 2,000 years. So it's.
But can we really say that they love us? No.
Part of the population does, and part of the population doesn't.
Yeah, and that's a problem, isn't it?
That's a problem.
The half that don't appreciate us probably look at us as invaders, their country.
Yeah, they just don't believe we should be there for anything.
Right.
And even though we're donating so many millions and billions of dollars to try and help build up their economy,
get them stabilized,
they still try to kill us.
It's a different mindset, isn't it?
Oh, totally different mindset.
Probably on the maybe when the younger generation becomes adults, maybe they'll realize, they've seen enough maybe to realize that, hey, this isn't right.
Well,
hopefully.
It seems to be the children that are under 12 and the people that are above 40, those are the ones who appreciate us, because they're the children don't know anything but the Taliban and what they did, and the over 40 have dealt with Taliban, the Russians, and so they understand
they got to make a choice.
That we're not as bad as the Russians were, and we're definitely not as bad as the Taliban. So the middle-aged people are the ones, a lot of them, when the Russians were there, they fled to Pakistan. And while they were in Pakistan, they went to I forget the name of the schools, they call the schools over there, but they were taught the Quran, but their idea of the Quran is not this, they get taught a different version of the Quran than what it truly is.
Right.
Yeah. What about, you say their main income is poppy. What about oil? I mean, the war was supposed to be about oil.
That would be Iraq. Iraq had the oil. Afghanistan doesn't have any oil that I know of.
They don't have anything.
Iraq had the oil. They had large oil fields,
Yeah,
but
Afghanistan doesn't have anything.
as far as I know, does not have an oil field whatsoever.
Didn't they have diatomaceous earth in Afghanistan? It's called diatomaceous earth.
I'm not familiar with that, but
it seemed like I read something.
I'm not familiar with
came
that.
From or could come from.
I know that the farther south, down towards Kandahar and over towards Herat, is a lower elevation than going up towards Kabul and Mazar Sharif, and they can grow a little bit more stuff in that area. But like I said, as you go farther east and north, you're starting to go into the high elevations. And like I said, Kabul was at 7,000 feet, and then it went up above that. They were 18, 19, 20,000 feet elevation, and that was the hard thing, to try and hump those mountains like that.
Yeah.
Now, you was there during several seasons, in summer, fall, and possibly winter also.
I left just at the beginning of the winter season, at January.
Okay, so excuse me, they have difference between heat and cold.
Yes, they in the summer it can get as high as 110, 120, and in the winter it can actually get down to below freezing. And I don't know how they get along and deal with the cold as far as we do. You see kids out barefoot, and
and I see them wearing loose clothing, not dressed up like we do.
No, they don't wear a whole lot of clothing at all. And I don't know how they even keep warm in the winter, because most of them their houses are built out of mud, and they usually either coal or wood, but it's hard to find wood because they've chopped so much of it down that it's mainly coal is the only way they can heat most, because electricity is, most of the cities that I was in, most houses had to have a generator to have their electricity. If they didn't have a generator, you probably didn't have electricity. So there was a lot of those cities that did not have electricity whatsoever.
Probably had to import their fuel in from the generator.
Oh, roger that. They had to import almost everything. A lot of the stuff would come across from up north that we called them the stands, because they were three of the Kyrgyzstan, and I can't remember the three of them, but they brought things down from there, or they brought them across from Pakistan, and that's the way we got all of our supplies and everything else, because it's a landlocked country, so everything has to either be driven in or flown in. So
now, if they heat with coal, they have stoves, did they?
Yeah, a lot of them were just homemade coals, like just a 55-gallon drum with a stovepipe going out. Just they knock a hole in the wall and stick it outside, and that was their heat.
Yeah, that's pretty primitive living by our standards.
Oh, that's a real primitive. It's
now, on your summer uniforms, did you have the moisture wicking in your uniforms?
Not at the time that I was over there. We just had the normal desert issue. They started bringing in the moisture wicking T-shirts at the time, but you had to buy them, and I chose not to purchase them. I just wore the desert or the brown T-shirt and
you sweat it out, right?
Sweat it out.
Understand. Same way it goes in winter. Field jackets.
Yeah, field jacket. We also had a Gore-Tex overcoat. It was rain, or it helped for the cold also. And then they also had what they called a polar bear. It was a black zip-up type. It wasn't a sweater. It was heavier than a sweater, and it was made for wearing it during the winter. So we were still better off than all the others over there. I just don't know how any of them survived.
Yeah. You mentioned the lower elevations, they could raise different things. What did you notice what it was, whether it was wheat or beans?
I believe corn and wheat are about the only two things that I even remember when I stationed up at Mazar Sharif for 3.5 months. You'd go by some of the little houses, and they might have a small plot where you might see a couple corn stalks that they were trying to grow. That's probably about it. Most of their eating, from what I understand, was rice and chicken. That was mainly their most meals were rice
Now,
and chicken.
Did this show up in the population as far as weight? Were they all thin?
Oh yes, you didn't
I-
see
I
any,
would- you
you
didn't
see
see
no
fat
heavy
people.
heavy people over there at all.
That's what I was wondering.
They were all skinny because most of them had a really poor diet.
Malnutrition.
So yeah, that's another reason why, like I said, the younger kids and the older generation, they loved us. We're feeding them, we're trying to help them, and they understood that. The 15 to 28-year-olds were the ones who had been taught the Quran.
They were the radicals.
And they were the radicals who, they'd go into Pakistan and then they'd come back across into Afghanistan.
Brainwashed.
Yeah, they were really badly brainwashed.
Yeah, it's a sad situation. Where was you at before they sent you to Afghanistan?
I was in the Army Guard out of Marion. I was in the 2nd of the 152nd Mechanized Infantry Battalion, and I was in that unit about 7 years.
Oh,
And we did mainly our Atterbury. Camp Atterbury was where we did most of our training. We went up to Camp Grayling once or twice, and Fort Polk 1 year, because our unit, they decided the mech was a little expensive to keep running because of the fuel it takes to run a mechanized infantry battalion with all the tracks. So they started having us train as Op 4, and so we would go against the 76th Infantry Brigade, which was a new infantry brigade that was stood up here in Indiana, separate of the 38 Infantry Division. And so we went to Fort Polk to train also with the Op 4 in Fort Polk to go against the 76th Infantry Brigade when they went down there to finally get their accreditation for becoming
So
the
that was war
76th.
games?
Right, yes, roger that.
War games, yes.
Are you you all through with the military now, or are you still
As
along
of right,
with-
well, I'm in the retired reserves, which they could call me back if they chose to do so, but probably wouldn't happen with, I'm 100% disabled by the VA, so
I see.
I really don't think they would call me back. I mean,
Yeah.
we'd have to have World War III for them to probably call me back.
I
So-
see. Now, I noticed you had some pictures of Tent City and
Oh,
so this way you want
well, this is the only picture I was able to find of Afghanistan. This is myself along with an interpreter, and the other gentleman is a A&A soldier, Afghanistan National Army, and he was going through training to be a medic. So this is when I was stationed up north at Mazar Sharif, which is up by the stands.
Sure.
And I spent 3.5 months up here with training them and trying to teach them better cleanliness habits. Their cleanliness habits were you couldn't they had outhouses, but they wouldn't use them. They would just, when they had to go, they'd just go outside and dry and
It's
go.
like an animal, right?
Just like an animal. And
Yep.
we were trying to tell them, this is not good for you.
Right.
And they had been doing it for so many years that nothing mattered to them. They just
Can't break a bad habit.
can't. It was hard to get them to understand. This is, and we'd have to go over when we were at the camp that this was at. We had a section that was American and then the Afghani. So we had our own mess hall and they had their own mess hall. But we'd have to go over to their mess hall to try and even give them cleanliness habits over there,
Yeah,
because they had raw meat that they would start to cut up to cook, and there'd be so many flies on it. And they had no screens on the windows. They had the windows open with no screens on them, and flies would just fly in. Like I said, it was just a real dirty country. It was the dirtiest country I think I've even been to in my life. I've
Now,
been
do
to
you think-
Mexico, and it's
Do you
not
think
as
they
bad.
got used to those conditions, or do you think that caused lots of disease among them?
They got used to it, but it still caused a lot of diseases. I can't remember how many different. There was so many different diseases over there. West Nile virus, militia. I forget how they call it.
Like malaria?
No, well, they had malaria. We had to take our
Mosquitoes?
mefloquine
Sure.
every week to prevent us from getting malaria. But there was another one that you would get bit by sand fleas, and that would cause another one of these infections and diseases that we're not even accustomed to over here, because we don't even have the sand fleas over here that they have over there. So
Well, let's hope that our military is educating them enough that they bring them up to date a little bit.
well, I know we were doing it. We were training them, but it was hard to get them to understand.
Well, maybe eventually they'll catch on to it.
I hope.
I would hope so too.
So
Nobody likes to see people suffer needlessly. you know.
No. It was surprising while I was over there, being 42 years old. They told me I was at I was considered old even by Afghanistan standards, because they'd be lucky if they could make it to age 50.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That was
Because of all the diseases and
Sure.
just because of such a rough environment, that it was how, like I said, I don't know how they survive. We would be doing road convoys, and we'd see somebody carrying or taking a cow or a goat into the small cities, and before you knew it, they'd had somebody decapitate it and hung it up and skinned it right there, and there would be so many flies on it that we wouldn't eat it, but people
They
would
eat
come
it.
up and tell them I want a piece of that and take it home. And that's why Americans, we were told not to eat any of the food. The main
Local-
problem we didn't
local
eat any of
stuff.
their food was because over here we use animal, excuse me, I'm sorry, I have a,
Yeah.
Sure.
we use animal manure over here for our fields.
We use human.
They use human.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine all the diseases they've already got.
Pass the
and then
disease
they're
on.
just going out and fertilizing their crops with the same. And so that was another reason why they told us not to eat, unless it was cooked. And then you were still taking
Well done.
it. You were still taking it in your own hands. I let a physician's assistant, while I was stationed up north, talk me into going over onto the Afghan side and having some chicken and rice. And I ended up getting so sick that I puked up blood. And I did it twice. He convinced me to go over again, and after the second time, I said, I've had enough of their food. I don't need any more of their food. So.
Yeah. Well, you're not accustomed to it.
Oh,
And they
no.
were, so they could.
Oh, yeah. What they were accustomed to.
They could probably take nails or iron or anything.
They
their
had to have
system was
stomachs that were
used
a
to
lot
it.
stronger than ours.
Sure.
Do you think you'll ever be able to trust their military? It seems like there's always incidences.
They've been infiltrated so bad.
Yeah, that seems to be the biggest problem. They've got the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda have infiltrated into the ANA. And like I said, you don't know the difference between, it's not like when we were in World War II, you knew the difference mainly between a German and a Japanese. But over there, they're all the same.
Yeah.
Everybody's a potential, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're in not only the military, police, and everything else.
Oh, yeah, all of them. You just never knew who was going to try and shoot you or use an IED against you. Or luckily, while I was over there, we didn't have a lot of problems with the IEDs at the time, because that was something that was just coming about in Iraq. But after I left, the Taliban and Al-Qaeda started seeing how much damage they were doing in Iraq. So they said, well, why don't we do it over here? So that started to become a big thing after I left over there. But like I said, on top of the problem with IEDs over there was so many millions of mines that the Soviets had seeded the whole country with. They even had made some of the mines look like children's toys. And they'd throw them out on the ground, and it wasn't uncommon to see kids without a hand, kids without an arm, kids without a leg. They had a lot of prosthetic buildings where people would go and get retrofitted for a leg or an arm, but they weren't the same quality as what we have over here. But everybody, there were so many that were missing arms and legs and hands, children, adults, because not only the Taliban and Al Qaeda, they would go out and dig up mines from the Soviets had left, and then they just took them out other places
right?
and stuck them where. So there, like I said, there was just you never really wanted to walk off the beaten path, so to say.
Yeah.
But they could probably get all they wanted from Pakistan.
That was the biggest problem.
Yeah.
I always said that I can't even think. Osama bin Laden, I always said he was in Pakistan because of the stories that I've read and everything. Like when they did the 2001 Anaconda, Operation Anaconda, they were told to not be behind in between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So all they basically did was just run them right up into Pakistan.
Okay.
And they would go into Pakistan, get taken care of, get fed, get clothed, and back into Afghanistan they would come.
Yep.
They're just back and forth across the border, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Border wasn't guarded.
Well, the Pakistanis claim it was guarded, but
Well, that's claims, yeah.
they had too many ties with the Afghanis, and they just pretty much let them come across anytime they wanted.
Even if they didn't have a tie, probably a little bribe would go a long ways.
Oh, yeah, money talks over there. That's a big thing.
That's too bad that you had to operate under those kind of conditions, but basically it means you was on alert every time you was outside, right?
Yeah, every time you left the wire, you didn't know what was going to happen. And even inside the wire, because they would...
Mortars?
Mortars or the RPGs. They would, they can lob those over. They just started building the bunkers when I got there. When I was over there, when I first got there, we were living in tents. And they had sandbags like 3 feet high around the tent.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's that going to do? That's not, if they get a direct hit,
It wouldn't
we're
stop
all
a
going.
direct hit, but it
So,
might stop shrapnel. So
that would be about it. If you heard something, they told you to get on the floor. But if we had a direct hit, then we were probably all gone.
Oh, sure.
Real quick, we're just about out of time. I see some pictures of Egypt.
Yeah, my first, I joined in 1983, and so in 83 to 84, they sent me to the Sinai Peninsula, which separates Egypt and Israel as a peacekeeping force. Then after this is the Nile River that you see here, and of course here's the different pyramids, and this is also an aerial view of Cairo itself. And I enjoyed my time over there. We didn't have hardly any problems while we were over there, and I enjoyed myself there greatly. I've got a few other pictures. This is another picture of the Nile, and these two pictures are a memorial they built for Anwar Sadat. He was murdered in, I believe it was 89, I believe. I don't remember what year.
That sounds about right.
But they had a coup, and they killed him in a ceremony that he was having. So they built these two pyramids in honor of him. Then I was in Germany, and I made it to Berlin for 6 weeks. And this is a memorial they built in Berlin, and the other one they built in Frankfurt, because in '54, when the Russians finally they built the wall, they stopped all the people from being able to go into Berlin, because Berlin was actually in Soviet-occupied country. So
they had the airlift.
We had to do the airlift for I forget how many thousands of tons they did. So they built this memorial from Berlin, and then one in Frankfurt for the airlift. And then, of course, here's Checkpoint Charlie, which no longer exists because it was there for you to be able to cross from East Berlin to West Berlin.
Yeah.
Since they've tore the wall down, they don't have that anymore. Here's some pictures of the actual wall. I don't know if they can see it on there on the TV, but it says you are now leaving the American sector. So you stepped over the line, you were in.
Okay. Well, we're out of time,
Well,
gentlemen. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much.
Ed, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Thank
Remember, freedom is not free. So if you see a veteran or someone in uniform, just walk up to them, say thank you for your service, shake their hand. Thank you and good night.